All right, today on part 2 of Summer of Dissent, we have more on the cancellations. We've had quite a bit of cancellations coming in this week, as well as a little bit more, just a little bit more on Chicago, and even more coming right up. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to part 2, if I can say, part 2 of Black Spring with Autumn on your Friday. Hope everybody's having a great Friday. And if not, you're off to or it's too early to tell, but you're on the right track for a great Friday and maybe even a great weekend. So at the close of the last segment, we were doing we got a little bit into the protest and a little bit of the federal intervention in the Chicago, protest and the demonstrations that were being held outside of the mayor's home. And we had a couple more stories we were going to get into today. This is a bit of a flash stream, and you can kind of anticipate, a little bit asymmetrical streams every now and then. I'm trying to be more consistent with at least the Monday, Tuesdays that are going to happen at the 10 o'clock PST. That's the Pacific Standard Time, wherever you are. And shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much for coming in. And if you guys could do your due diligence on that housekeeping with the thumbs up or the thumbs down, dare to share, or just make sure you continue to subscribe, because the technocrats are totally shoring up their efforts to quell the voices that are not like theirs, or their mission or their agenda is not the same. Or if you're just simply trying to get to the truth and you're not really affiliating yourself a left or right, but wherever you're coming from, maybe we'll meet somewhere before we're done on these segments. So shout out to Cold War Jesus, and shout out to the loyal patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, Angels Army, Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, Gary L. Young, Keith Jr., and a special shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. And once again, I'd like to remind everybody to keep an eye on your community tab. Got a little bit behind this week, but if I'm lucky, I'll get those announcements out by the end of the day, or at least by the weekend, maybe even by the weekend. But definitely, I would imagine I'd have something for sure. The next guest appearance will be coming out very soon. So thank you guys so much for all you do to support the channel. Hope you guys are doing well. So I thought about, well, just to do a little bit of a different path on this part 2 of this segment, that we'll talk about the cancellations. I mean, just think about it. We had Margaret Sanger's cancellation earlier this week, or just a couple of days ago. But it's interesting that I made this point the other day, and I'm not an I told you so personality, but I did mention, if we're righting the wrongs from the past, and I don't want to say we, if the culture is cancellation, well, does that mean you cancel yourself, or you cancel your legacy? And that brings me to the next story. Shout out to Pammy Clyde. Good to see you, Pammy Clyde. Thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So I'm going to bring you to that. So we have actually a representative out of Texas. It's going to be Lou Gomert, or I wouldn't say Lou Gomer, but he has an idea for cancellation. So what I want to do is I'm going to bring you a little bit of that. It's a bit of a long haul, but he gives you the context, and he gives you enough landscaping that you kind of know where he's going. He proposes, or either it's a resolution, and I know I have feelings about resolutions, that the Democrats should be canceled. So without further ado, I'll bring you guys to that clip. It's going to come from Breitbart on that. Any info on the Feds versus Chicago? The only thing I'm going to address this just as Cold War Jesus. The only thing I have on that is just something that I had earlier. So of course, they had a group of activists. Of course, I think BLM has a resource or a headquarters there, and what it's they're actually suing. They're going to sue of course, AG Barr and Trump administration and probably Chicago PD, because they are saying, of course, they're asserting this whole tyrannical or totalitarian narrative that, these are unmarked vans, unmarked officers. That's really all I have right now. They are actually going to do they're going to do a lawsuit, or if they've already filed. I believe yesterday they filed a lawsuit in reference to that, but I think maybe it's too late, I would imagine, because if I'm not mistaken, I think they may even be physically in the area already. I can try to verify some of that, but I think they may be in the area already. I think some ATF vans, I think, may have already in the buffering again. Okay, so I'm going to take you to, I guess, cancellation part 2 of this week. Hope you guys are doing well. Shout out to you. Shout out to Pammy Clyde. Thank you guys for doing your diligence and coming in. This is a part 2 from earlier. I did a much earlier stream earlier today, so I may do a recap on some of those stories, but it's generally around the same kinds of things. Chicago, some of the major cities, the metropolitan cities that are going to be subject to federal intervention on the violence and the violence in those areas. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead, and then we might even talk a little bit about the legend, the Operation Legend, which was inspired, which was inspired by the death of a child in one of these cities, in which there seems to be little or no leadership. I will just say this, that I think it's, they have a bigger agenda on this. It's not just about hating Trump. It's not just the hate Trump at this point. So I'll come back to that. But before that, let's go to Lou Gohmert of Texas and a little bit on his proposal. We won't do the whole thing. I'll give you the gist, and I'll give you at least the thesis on that, and then we'll take you out to the final conclusion there. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this Friday of this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
With the purpose of eliminating 4 specific statues or busts from the United States Capitol, along with all others that include individuals who, quote, served as an officer or voluntarily with the Confederate States of America or the military forces or government of a state while the state was in rebellion against the United States, unquote, yet failed to address the most ever-present historical stigma of the United States Capitol. That is the source that so fervently supported, condoned, and fought for slavery, that was left untouched, but without whom the evil of slavery could never have continued as it did, to such extreme that it is necessary to address here in order for the U.S. House of Representatives to avoid degradation of historical fact and blatant hypocrisy for generations to come. whereas the Democratic Party platform of 1840, 1844, 1848, 1852, and 1856 states, quote, that Congress has no power under the Constitution to interfere with or control the domestic institutions of the several states, and that such states are the sole and proper judges of everything appertaining to their own affairs, not prohibited by the Constitution, that all efforts of the abolitionists or others made to induce Congress to interfere with questions of slavery are calculated to lead to the most alarming and dangerous consequences, and that all such efforts have an inevitable tendency to diminish the happiness of the people and endanger the stability and permanency of the Union, and ought not to be countenanced by any friend of our political institutions, unquote. Again, from the Democratic Party platform of those years. Whereas the Democratic Party platform of 1856 further declares that new states to the Union should be admitted, quote, with or without domestic slavery, as the state may elect, unquote. Whereas the Democratic Party platform of 1856 also resolves that, quote, we recognize the right of the people of all the territories to form a constitution with or without domestic slavery, whereas the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 penalized officials who did not arrest an alleged runaway slave and made them liable for a fine of $1,000, which is about $28,000 in present day value. Law enforcement officials everywhere were required to arrest people suspected of being a runaway slave on as little as a claimant's sworn testimony of ownership. The Democratic Party platform of 1860, directly in seeking to uphold the Fugitive Slave Act, states that, quote, the enactments of the state legislatures to defeat the faithful execution of the Fugitive Slave Law are hostile in character, subversive of the Constitution, revolutionary in their effect, unquote. The Democratic Party platform again. Whereas the 14th Amendment, giving full citizenship to freed slaves, passed in 1868 with 94% Republican support, 0% Democratic support in Congress. The 15th Amendment, giving freed slaves the right to vote, passed in 1870 with 100% Republican support and 0% Democratic support in Congress, whereas Democrats systematically suppressed African Americans' right to vote by the specific example in the 1902 Constitution of the state of Virginia, actually disenfranchised about 90% of the black men who still voted at the beginning of the 20th century, and nearly half of the white men, so they suppressed Republican voters as well. The number of eligible African American voters were thereby forcibly reduced from about 147,000 in 1901 to about 10,000 by 1905. That measure was supported almost exclusively by Virginia Democrats. And whereas the Virginia 1902 Constitution was engineered by Carter Glass, the future Democratic U.S. Representative, Senator, and Secretary of Treasury under Democrat President Woodrow Wilson, who proclaimed the goal of the Constitutional Convention as follows, quote, this Democrat exclaimed, quote, discrimination. Why, this is precisely what we propose. That's exactly what this convention was elected for, to discriminate to the very extremity of permissible action under the limits of the federal Constitution with a view toward elimination of every, and I won't use his word, but African-American voter who can be gotten rid of legally, unquote, which was said by a Democrat and applauded by his fellow Democrats. Whereas in 1912, Democratic President Woodrow Wilson's administration began a racial segregation policy for U.S. government employees, and by 1914, the Wilson administration Civil Service instituted the requirement a photograph be submitted with each employment application. And whereas the 1924 Democratic National Convention convened in New York City at Madison Square Garden, the convention commonly was known as the Klan Bake due to the overwhelming influence of the Ku Klux Klan in the Democratic Party. And whereas in 1964, the Democratic Party led a 75 calendar day filibuster against the 1964 Civil Rights Act, whereas leading the Democrats in their opposition to civil rights for African Americans was a member of the Democratic Party, Senator Robert Byrd from West Virginia, who was a known recruiter for the Ku Klux Klan. Whereas Democrats enacted and enforced Jim Crow laws and civil codes that forced segregation, restricted freedoms of Black Americans in the United States. Whereas on June 18, 2020, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ordered the removal from the Capitol portraits of four previous speakers of the House who served in the Confederacy, saying that these portraits, quote, set back our nation's work to confront and combat bigotry, unquote. The men depicted in the portraits were Democrat Robert M.T. Hunter, Democrat Howell Cobb, Democrat James L. Orr, and Democrat Charles F. Crisp. Resolved that the Speaker of the House of Representatives shall remove any item that names, symbolizes, or mentions any political organization or party that has ever held a public position that supported slavery or the Confederacy from any area within the House wing of the Capitol or any House office building, and shall donate such item or symbol to the Library of Congress. And two, that any political organization or party that has ever held a public position that supported slavery or the Confederacy shall either change its name
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So there you have House resolution that's being proposed. For one, when it comes to resolutions in this case, for most resolutions, they're pretty they're kind of toothless. So I'm not sure, if canceling them is going to, if they're going to change their name, but what would they be changing it to? And do they have the in another way is what I suspect. You can't erase, you can't dress it up, you can't fix it up. What they've done. I mean, earlier this week we had cancellation of Margaret Sanger. So what are they going to do now? What are they going to? How are they going to? What are they going to change the name of the headquarters of the Margaret Sanger in the headquarters of the Planned Parenthood in New York to? What are they going to do? I make abortion and not literally, but that's the tactic. It's all about the the means to the end. It's not going to be, yeah, sure. I'm sure they'll figure out something even more sinister. Presentation, if you will. And he also pretty much links the Robert Byrd as the recruiter extraordinaire as an admired. He was quite admired by, according to many, and also admired by Hillary Clinton. And I think he also had some accolades from the former President Barack Obama on quite doing a name change right about now. I mean, I'm sure that's what they wanted to do on day one. They hit the ground running with all their radical and socialist plans for the country. And I do apologize for the buffering. I'm not really sure. Let's see what's happening here. But I don't want to interrupt this stream because this is a return. I have come back from a earlier stream. I had to leave on that busy week. But thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you for doing your due diligence on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And shout out to you. Good afternoon to you. How are you guys doing in Las Vegas? I would imagine, let's see. Shout out to Cold War Jesus, who says, yes, this is an interesting problem for the cancel culture party because they weren't aware of their own history. There you go. So what I'm going to do also is, and you guys may have heard of this organization before, but I think I've seen them online, or I've seen one of their meetings. I'm going to be bringing up a little bit something on teachers unions and their quest to defund the police. But that's another story. But this next one is actually going to be on an organization that you guys may have heard of. And this will actually it'll just be verbiage here. So what you see before you is actually the DSA. Now, this is an organization. It's dsausa.org, and it's the Democratic Socialist of America. I don't know if that's an option for the Democrats. I don't know, but I guess we'll find out if they're going to change their name at all. This is not so good. Well, I hear you. It's a crazy. It's a radical time. I'm trying to. I mean, it's rough. Hang on, just one second. Okay, so. All right, so let me just give you a little bit of. We'll just do a little bit of landscape here. So just for kicks, it says who we are and what we do. This is the Democratic Socialist of America, which is the largest DSA. It's the largest socialist organization in the United States. We believe that working people should run both the economy and society democratically to meet human needs, not to make profits for a few. We are a political and activist organization, not a party. Through campus and community-based chapters, DSA members use a variety of tactics from legislative to directive action to fight for reforms that empower working people. All right, we'll keep going here. All right, so they talk about this is just giving you a little bit of background on some of these organizations. And I thought it was kind of apropos considering democratic socialism is something that even Bernie Sanders coined during his two-time campaign strategy previously. So current campaigns, DSA, YDSA chapters organize around various issues, striving to run strategic campaigns based on local conditions. Nationally, we also provide resources and support for work done as part of our major priorities as democratically voted upon. So here you go, enters, you guessed it, Green New Deal. And we've talked about previously the Green New Deal, kind of when it was rolling out. Of course, you have the squad members and you have the Sunrise Movement. That's another force that's out there next to the BLMs and the Antifa. So, but the Green New Deal is a huge catalyst for a lot of what's gone on, I think, in the last few years. I think mostly during the whole Trump administration. So Green New Deal, the climate crisis is an emergency. The world's top scientists say we have little time to get off fossil fuels. Meanwhile, inequality is already out of control. So you can kind of see the way this is primed here. You already got your inequality and how how socialism can make everything all right, and even that pesky arm that you got that might be a little bit longer than the other one, than the left arm. It's just bizarre. It's to find out that people actually have these kinds of ideologies, I think it took me a long time to get to that. It took me a long time to get to it. But unfortunately, many people don't know. Many people support this and they don't even know what's behind it. So I'll just keep going. So we fight for a Green New Deal because it's the only plan that meets the scale of the crisis, one that puts people and planet over profit to build a more just and sustainable economy. We're organizing our work. We're organizing in our workplaces, communities, and schools to build a working class movement it will take to win. So there you go. You've got concerted efforts here. And that's the issue, and of course, in a civic society, you have NGOs, that's non-governmental organizations, but these people they're no different than the BLMs and the Antifas and the Sunrise movements. They seek power, and they want to nominate and elect officials that are going to push their agendas and their ideologies forward on a legislative level. Enters your squad members. In fact, I think I did a segment before, which, depending on your area, there was about maybe 4 areas. Maybe it was Texas, New York, maybe a couple of Midwest seats that were open, in which the Sunrise movement had pretty much recruited those people to run. So not only there's more where the AOCs and Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omar's and Ayanna Pressley's, there's more where that came from. They're being recruited to push these things forward. So you've got a lot working against the values that are here. You've got a lot of people that are working on the indoctrination of kids in schools, and nihilist. We've got a lot of nihilists out there, and they're like I said, you go back to the 60s and you can see where the sociological stage and the paradigm was set for the schools via the Frankfurt schools. And even from that, even more movements. I think we just got this big, everything is we had Coward and Piven. They had an entire movement to bankrupt the economy. And it's really not that much different today. We have these virtual one party tyranny going on. It's virtual, a virtual one party state in many of these states, like California for one. I think Virginia is likely to be one. Just more. It's all these cities that are popping up, these liberal cities. I mean, I think for one, conservatives, I think we lose a lot of battles. I didn't say lose the war. I think we lose a lot of battles. The only thing that's really kind of holding this whole thing off is, when sometimes you think, well, gosh, where is the Constitution, and then the Second Amendment. But I do believe that they are, that these other factions, these other agendas, they're working to undo them all. They do it in waves. They all go underground on some level, and they come back out. They're definitely back out every 4 years. And we have election cycles. We have 2 to 4 years. You have your mid elections, and you have your 2-year elections, your 4-year elections, and I think these groups, they run similar on this scale there. So I'll go back. I'm just going to finish that up. Don't mean to take too much time on that. Shout out to you guys in the stream. Thank you guys for doing your due diligence, and shout out to everybody that came in earlier today. I really appreciate it. A little bit 11th hour, but it's Friday. So it was either this or a moonlight stream. So I figure, I just come back and complete this one. So with that said, let me finish out that. And I got a little bit more coverage for you on what's going on in some of the other major cities. Maybe just a little bit of coverage or a couple of some footage on the Operation Legend, and something on teachers unions. Isn't it ironic that teachers unions are rising up in protest? All right, I'll keep going here. All right, so you have the strong labor movement. Capitalism pits us against each other, and workplaces are fundamentally authoritarian unless workers can self-organize and build collective power. This is why people build unions and why employers undermine them. It is also why the capitalists are as a class, constantly promote narratives about unions that frame them as unnecessary, undemocratic, or ineffective. We know better. We're building work power in every region of the country. Okay, so then they go on to bring you the whole Medicare for all statement. And here they have healthcare is a huge segment of our economy, and healthcare access is deeply and widely felt need. In the capitalist system, you have to pay to get care or go without, but it doesn't have to be this way. In the democratic socialist system, we would collectively provide care as a society. M4A is a stepping stone towards that vision. We're using this campaign to build a working class base of people fighting for state and national power. Okay, so got a bit of a timeline here for you, an update. Not sure. So you can check this out. I'll drop this in the stream for you. You can see what they're looking at, and of course you can see how some of the same kind of platforms and agendas are echoed in your representatives. Shout out to everybody in the stream. So there you have your dsausa.org. Okay, I'll take you guys right out of that one, and let's move over to, since we're talking about, we're talking about, some things that are centered around the, the defund the police and this kind of a bit, and cancellation is he's canceling the police. It's just a big cancellation time, right? So we're going to go on to, let's go over to the teachers union segment of this. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Shout out to Console Fix, Cold War Jesus, Rick Bose Rides. Shout out to Pammy Clyde. I'm so glad you guys could come in. I haven't seen you in a while, Pammy Clyde. Let's see. It's nice. Console Fix could join in. So let's go over to, let's go just a little bit of clip here, just give you some perspective. All right, this is going to come from the Law Enforcement Today. Law Enforcement Today. So let's have a little bit of that. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Okay, so just a little bit of a challenge there with the audio, but I'll just give you a little bit of context here. So this is the Los Angeles Teachers Union's demands. Teachers Union demands defunding the police to make up for their failure to educate children. This is an op-ed. Okay, so this is a little bit older, but nonetheless. All right, so defund the police. That is a demand. That is the demand of the mob seeking to remove the only obstacle to a total and complete takeover of the United States by those who seek to destroy the American way of life. So this is an op-ed, and turn the country into a socialist utopia. On the forefront of that assault are some educators. You want to talk about funding a public entity. Maybe it's time we talk about defunding education. And by education, we mean public education, also including public universities and private, quote, nonprofit, end quote, institutions, which are doing a great job of indoctrinating our kids in Marxist ideology. In Los Angeles, Teachers Union has thrown down with the mob, demanding that the police be defunded before they will go back and do their jobs. All right, according to the Washington Examiner here, reported last month that the LA Teachers Union has demanded through a, quote, research paper, end quote, that schools in the district should not be reopened unless there are certain policies put in place, which ranges from mandatory face mask to a quote moratorium, end quote, on charter schools and defunding of police. Okay, so I think I have something here for you. So I'll bring you that coverage. I'm not sure if this is KTLA. I'll go ahead and bring it to, yeah, it is KTLA. So you have Sergeant Nestor Gonzalez. He is an LA school, he's an LA school police of the LA School Police Department. So once again, like, thank everybody for joining me on this
Tell me, why are you here and what is
your message?
Lena, we've been here since yesterday, 6 p.m. We camped out here because we want everyone to know out there, all of our students and faculty members that are out there. We've been suffering way too much with this pandemic, but we're out here to relay one message and one message only, is that safety is a priority with the school district, not just here in Los Angeles, but nationwide. Defunding, moving monies around to take away safety from our kids is something that we should really consider. And I trust that our Board of Education today will really consider the topics at hand and make a good decision today.
You know, one of the topics at hand is to slash significantly the police budget in schools. This is something that you and your administration have been working on. What are some of the proposals that you have in mind for that?
So that's one of the proposals that's floating out there. I just want to reiterate that change is happening, and we get that. We're police officers with the Los Angeles Unified School District. We've been through budget issues before. Change is going to happen, but we want to be part of that change. It's very important that we work together more than ever right now to meet halfway. We need more counselors. We need more deans. We need all that. I'm a product of Los Angeles Unified School District. I was born and raised here in the city. So this is a personal item for me. I want my kids to be able to go meet with the counselor or a dean to get some advice. All I'm asking for is, well, all we're asking for is for us to meet halfway.
And what would halfway be for you? You said earlier you want to see some of this funding go toward community outreach. Give me an example of that.
Well, it would be nice to have more deans, more counselors, more social workers at our school sites where we could work collaboratively. We've been doing it. We've been doing this for years now. We've been doing restorative justice. We went through the training, in intensive training. A lot of our school officers are trained in restorative justice. We've been practicing that. All we want is for the district to take a look at the budget that's being proposed now and work together with us and not defund our department. We need safety at our schools.
Speaking of training, Austin Butner, the superintendent for LAUSD, he said in a recent interview that school police is very different from LAPD, also very different from the sheriff's department. Your training, talk about that.
So every peace officer in the state of California goes to the same post, peace officer standards and training, mandated training. There's no way around that. The additional training that we get here, Officer Buhner is right. Our superintendent is correct. We get extra training in mental health and restorative justice models and theories. We also get training from our local staff members, from our teachers. They guide us in the right direction how to talk to our kids. And that's something a local municipal agency does not have.
Do you think there's something that they could take from you and how you handle situations to de-escalate in schools?
Absolutely. I think we could all learn from each other. That's something we've always do. We always collaborate with our local agencies. We deal with 13 other local area agencies throughout the county here. And so that's something that we always do. We're always collaboratively talking with each other, having these open conversations on how we could approach the best approach in dealing with our kids.
All right. Thank you so much.
happening there. But yeah, so there you have a little bit of, you have some feedback from someone that's actually involved in the community. And it seems to be, it's a huge battle. There's these small little battles everywhere. And so take some time to take that in. We'll follow, of course, these are going to be a lot of stories that we're going to continue to follow, but there's just so many of them. And we'll continue to follow the defund the police and what's behind. I mean, were they actually really, it's more of a bargaining chip. It's just like BLM, George Floyd. All of this is being used as some type of bargaining chip or hostage situation. And of course, this is involving, kids' future, their lives, and even kids are probably getting some of this indoctrination by now in terms of police. So I'll go on to the next. I'm going to bring you a clip from earlier, which involves the this is the mother of a murdered Kansas City 4-year-old, and she's making an appeal at the White House. And this was done on Wednesday when President Trump announced the expansion of the federal operation that began in Kansas City, sending the federal agents to Chicago and Albuquerque. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Look who's here. It's been a lifetime, and it's, ladies and gentlemen, about time. About time. How are you doing? How are you on this Friday? And you can see there's bricks, a brick-inspired setup right now. I'm still hanging around about time. So, yeah, I really appreciate you for coming in, and we're gonna have just a little bit of commentary from a little bit of an appeal from the mom of one of these fatal and tragic losses. Excellent. Your good first day off in a while. Thanks. I really appreciate the bricks. Bricks designed with you in mind. Bruce Wayne, how are you doing? Nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. This is not a normally scheduled stream, but always glad to have you guys in. I really started earlier this morning, so I was on around 6:15 this morning, which would be your guys's if you're on the right coast, if I can say that. That was like at 9:15, and then of course it was 8:15 on the Central Standard, so it was kind of an early dig in. But let's go to that story. Thank you guys so much for coming in, and thank you so much for doing your diligence on your housekeeping, on the thumbs up, the thumbs down. All right, so okay, Bruce Wayne, Monday, Tuesdays are the regular schedules. I want to commit to Wednesday, but definitely the Monday, Tuesday, the 10 a.m. The PST. I had a bit of a scheduling conflict that came up at the last minute on Mondays occasionally, but definitely the 10 o'clock, the 10 a.m. And I'm thinking I may add the Wednesday back to it as well. So I'll put an update on the schedule. And also I am going to be, I'm bringing in a guest, hopefully bringing in a guest within the next couple of weeks, if not sooner. So thanks so much, guys. Oh, you're going live at 2 p.m. Nice, Console Fix. You guys make sure you go over to check out Console Fix. He's going to go live at 2 p.m. So check out Console Fix. Check out everybody in the stream. This is not a grow channel, but I don't mind, I don't mind you guys supporting each other or networking, even whether it's covert or whether, I just have some extra time to say, hey, go over and check out this person's page. All right, so let's have a little bit from the meeting on Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for joining.
For some, it's their yard. For others, sports. Some totally disconnect. But the real weekend warriors are saving at Nebraska Furniture Mart during the weekend sale. At 6 o'clock starts now.
I stand here today as a mother fighting against violence for my son, Legend Taliaferro. My family and I support Operation Legend, and we strongly want our community and everyone else behind us.
The mother of a murdered Kansas City 4-year-old makes an emotional appeal at the White House. Today, President Trump announced an expansion of the federal operation that began here in KC, sending federal agents to both Chicago and Albuquerque. Brad.
But tonight, there are others who are questioning the politics of the president's actions. KCTV5's Leslie Aguilar is live tonight with more on what this announcement means and why some people are opposed to it. Leslie?
Brad, right now there's a divide in the Black community over Operation Legend. Many see this as a federal occupation or as a training ground for martial law. But the family of Legend Taliaferro and others see this as an opportunity to get justice for hundreds of homicide victims in Kansas City.
The operation in Chicago will be done as part of Operation Legend, which was recently launched in Kansas City, Missouri.
Not even a week after federal agents arrived in Kansas City under Operation Legend, the Trump administration announced its expansion to Chicago, Albuquerque, and possibly other cities.
Operation Legend is not to harass, it's not to harm or to hurt. It is to help investigate unsolved murders.
Sharon Powell is 4-year-old Legend Taliaferro's mother, the namesake of the whole operation.
My one and only child, who fought through open heart surgery at 4 months, is gone due to senseless gun violence.
Despite her support of the federal effort to combat crime, there's a large group of protesters against it, including this man who calls himself X.
She wants justice for her son, but when it comes down to it, is like I keep saying, more police does not equal less crime.
He's a leader of Black Rainbow, a group that wants to defund KCPD and get rid of Police Chief Rick Smith. He equates Operation Legend with what's going on in Portland.
There was a group of protesters that got snatched by unmarked police cars on Friday in Kansas City. They were denied access to the lawyers and held over for 24 hours.
KCPD says there were 11 arrests that night and 7 people were held on an investigative hold for potential charges, but no federal agents were involved. Attorney Stacey Shaw was also at that Friday protest. She believes KCPD is emboldened to escalate protests now that federal agents are in town.
The FBI, DEA, ATF, ICE, all of those federal agencies have a really bad reputation in Black and brown communities for a reason. And so there is a lack of trust for a reason.
She now has a helmet with a face shield to wear in continued protests where she expects to be tear gassed by police. While protesters continue to call for the feds to leave, Legend's mother vows her continued support.
One thing about Legend, he was exciting. He loved basketball. He was a ball of joy. And I want his legacy to live on. And I want us to continue to fight against violence and also get justice for my son and others.
Now, KCPD says of the 11 people who were arrested in this area on Friday night, 1 of them was charged with 4th-degree assault of an officer, and 4 others were charged with misdemeanors. Reporting live.
All right. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So there you had a bit of coverage there. And of course, they gave you the other side of the coin, which is, you know, the media has an incredible way of speaking for a very audacious way of speaking for entire communities, and which is just, it's just a part of their propaganda and the left-wing agenda. Or a number of people in the Black community. So I don't really know who are they representing and who are they speaking for. I just, you know, you have these journalists who are more activists than they are journalists. There you have an attorney who is more activist than she is an attorney. And in past, you know, you could be, I mean, at times people have been disbarred for being for participating, for obstructing the justice that they say that they represent. They say that they represent some level of law, but then they just start manipulating, and they just start corrupting and adding to the problem. So that's just, it's no different than this whole socialist utopia that's going on. That's the way these mayors are conducting. They want to arm these streets with socioeconomic directors and social workers. And we know how's that going to work out for you. Arm yourself with a socioeconomic director. That's their idea. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. You can't, I mean, for one, I do absolutely feel for these parents that have lost their children, and I'm not sure what, of course, that the plan is on the whole operation, but I guess that's another story that we'll continue to follow. Because sitting by and doing nothing, I think that people are tired of that as well. So back to more cultural things. We have a situation out of Portland, which the public schools fires a football coach allegedly because he is a police officer. So I'm going to bring you that on how much more cancellation can you take. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much.
Details.
Continue to work hard, constantly improve.
Portland Public Schools fires a high school football coach allegedly because of his position as a police officer.
I was blown away at the gunk I had inside my skin.
Within that first use, I saw a giant difference.
Officer. Reports Wednesday say Ken Dulio was told Monday he had been fired from his job as the head coach of Cleveland High School's football program, after flyers had been posted around town with his photo linking him to past incidents as a police officer. The decision, Dulio believes, comes after a group put pressure on the school to fire him after he spoke on recent national unrest.
Officers in the city of Portland truly deeply care. I know. Officers would risk their life for anybody in any situation of any race. And to see the division that's happened, it's hurtful.
The flyers posted about Dulio's career as an officer cite 2 incidents that occurred in 2001, which he says are distorted. The first incident listed was when Dulio was attacked off duty by a gang, which some thought to be a retaliation of previous conflict. And the other incident listed was when Dulio shot an innocent man in a case of mistaken identity, which resulted in a $200,000 settlement. The man who was shot recovered. When asked to resign after the flyer surfaced, Dulio respectfully declined, and he was then fired. Athletic Director Marshall Haskins said the program chose to go in a different direction, but denied the decision had to do with Dulio's profession. In 2019, the officer took over the
and ethics. I mean, he's big on that.
And after one of his players was arrested in 2010, Dulio gave him a second chance.
If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be playing football right now. Really thank him a lot for that.
Daryl Turner, president of the Portland Police Association, called the firing discriminatory. And Scott Eidler, president of Cleveland's Booster Club, said the decision was a complete shock to the community. When the officer last addressed the public, his message was based around unity.
With this movement, bring the officers with you. Let us stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder, interlock arms of any race.
Dulio said he is open to the possibility of coaching again, but he is not sure if he will. Reagan Genchieski, One America News.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And thank you so much, Christine Tempest. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate that. You doing your diligence on the smashing that like button or the unlike button. I really appreciate it. And About Time says, hi, Crazy Chick Sheena. Thank you so much for coming in. You said the blank blank is gone crazy. Well, it's definitely some things are not quite on the not quite on the level, I guess, to say the least. We've certainly got some issues, and we've got a lot of battles. And what is it? It's just it's a wonky climate, to say the least. I'm going to give a shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Bruce Wayne. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to update the schedule because I know I've been so random. I've been so flashy this week with some of the streams. And then I think I maybe even did a Moonlight stream, I think. But that's also a possibility. I'm thinking I'm going to try to do at least one Moonlight stream a week. And I don't know. That's kind of, just kind of casting a net, if you're out there, if you have some time, I'll pick a time for that. But it's definitely going to be later. It's going to occur later for those of you on the East Coast. Shout out to About Time, the ghost of About Time. And shout out to Crazy Chick Sheena. Thank you so much, Christine Tempest. Thank you so much for coming in. Shout out to Cold War Jesus. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. Shout out to Console Fix. Shout out to Rick Bose Rides. Pammy Clyde. Yeah, so we're pretty much pretty heavy into the we're pretty much heavy into this cancellation season. So just to recap, we had the cancellation of Margaret Sanger earlier this week. Yesterday, we had the cancellation of the resolution proposed to cancel the Democrats. And we'll see what that looks like. So these are all going to end up being follow-up stories because they're so loaded. And also the Operation Legend that's going on. We're going to keep following that story. And so it's just a bit of a recap on today. And then just generally the protests are heating up over in Chicago today, and probably going to continue throughout the evening. So we'll keep an eye on those stories, and soon there will be an announcement for the next guest on Black Spring with Autumn. So I'm happy to bring that to you guys, and want to get that out to you as soon as possible so that you can have a chance at planning to attend that cancel teachers unions. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny you brought that up because we talked about that. We had a clip from the LA school district on that. Their demand is similar, same defund the it's who knew, but I guess more of these little battles are going to just keep popping up because they have an entire army of their own that have been deployed. But I think I do believe the left and the progressives are behind. You've got that going on. You've got sunrise movements that are recruiting more radicals to serve. These aren't leaders, they're servants, but they're not serving, they're not representing. So what exactly are they doing? It's quite tainted, quite infiltrated we are. And thank you guys so much. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this stream, and I really appreciate you guys for coming out. If there's a chance that there is a Moonlight stream, I will just do a random live on location. That's from wherever I am. I rarely do those, but I'll just do a random live stream and say, hey, there's going to be a live stream, and I'll post it in the live announcement that's what the live stream is about. It's announcing a Moonlight stream. So thank you guys so much. Hope you guys are having a great Friday and you've got good things planned for the weekend. Hard to believe it's another weekend. And I would say stay safe out there, but you know. Oh, same here. About time. Are you going live anytime soon? Shout out to everybody that's in the stream. Shout out to the patrons. One more shout out for them: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, Angels Army, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, as well as Little Miss Goth, Gary L. Youngkees Jr., as well as Cold War Jesus. Thank you so much. Yes, it was nice to see you guys. And have a great rest of your weekend.